Welcome, Richard, to the podcast. You have a degree in psychology. You're a master practitioner in NLP and an expert in narcissism, which is what we're going to talk about today. Welcome.
Allegedly, yes. Allegedly an expert, yeah. Yes, well, I know much of narcissism. Against my will, I've been pushed into this space, but yes, I do talk about narcissism a lot and spend a lot of time thinking about it for my clients. Yeah.
Well, since you said unfortunately, do you sometimes just get sick of it and don't want to talk about it anymore?
I would get sick of saying the same things over and over again, which has happened occasionally. But the subject itself is pretty complicated. And I think at this point in 2023, which is now my 10th year of laboring in this field, pushing the rock up the hill, I'm starting to think that narcissism, the way we typically talk about it, is a little bit of a red herring. It's a little bit of a distraction. And that's been a suspicion of mine for a few years. So that can be frustrating, is having a conversation with people online as a collective who are talking about narcissism on their own terms. And I'm not like a highbrow intellectual. I did a basic degree in psychology. I didn't do a master's or a PhD, but I respect the academic process still, and I respect reason. And there is nothing to be gained by people making up their own paradigms of narcissism or deviating from the orthodoxy. Narcissistic personality disorder is a term from the orthodoxy. Now, if we want to use it, we have to submit to the orthodoxy. And if we're going to challenge the orthodoxy, we have to say we're challenging it. So there's a lot of unreason. That's frustrating. But the subject itself is a good challenge. It's a good challenge. And I'm finding new depth all the time and new layers to this subject all the time and new ways of finding solutions for the people who follow me to make the procedure of guiding them out from narcissistic abuse and the effects of narcissistic abuse out of the darkness into light again. And I'm finding new ways of doing that all the time. And that's very fun. That's very rewarding.
So, well, let's start then with what a narcissist actually is.
Well, I'll start with what a narcissist isn't. It isn't when my boyfriend didn't buy me the birthday present I wanted. It isn't when my girlfriend was texting another guy. It isn't when I'm frustrated with my mother-in-law. So unfortunately, there are sort of like dual effects that are taking place adjacent to each other. One is it's just called psychologization. I can't remember the gentleman's name, but I know that he's Dutch, and he was talking in a Belgian university. And he wrote about psychologization, which is the process by which psychology escapes academia and the clinician's office, and sort of like a virus permeates into the modern culture. And it's not good. It's not good. Generally speaking, we would all, as good empathic people, think, oh, if there's more psychology around, we can all have more open conversations about mental health issues. And that is good. But the downsides outweigh the upsides of it. The second thing is the TikTok and Instagram effect and the popularization of clinical terms that people use to try and make themselves sound cleverer than they really are. So gaslighting is overused, narcissism is overused, ADHD is overused. And it's a very simple test to prove that it's overused. You'll have people who've clicked this video because it says narcissism in the title, and they will say, I know what a narcissist is. And I would say, can you tell me what the 9 traits of narcissism according to the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual are, without looking them up? And people can do less than 2, typically. So whilst we all think we know what it is, probably we're all talking about something that we don't thoroughly understand. It is not when we're frustrated with somebody. It is not when somebody behaves badly. That doesn't mean they're a narcissist. Your boyfriend can dump you without being a narcissist. He may just be an asshole. He may just be selfish. He may just be vain. Narcissistic personality disorder is a very specific, very nuanced clinical entity. And it's one of the clinical entities that I think is actually fairly well defined in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, because I myself don't agree with the orthodoxy, but I accept there is one. So there is the first part of the answer to your question. Should I go on to what is a narcissist?
Yes, please.
Okay. So a narcissist, and there are experts online who make this mistake, and it's really to the detriment to the people following them. And these experts online are more intelligent. Some of them are more intelligent, more educated than I am, but they're slobs. They're intellectual slobs, and they're lazy, and they cave to the demands of their followers because they're whores and they just want likes and follows and Google ad revenue. And it's a terrible mistake to see this academic sluttishness and promiscuity take place, because it massively damages the actual victims of actual narcissistic abuse. They remain in hell more because of this laziness. So narcissism is not on a sliding scale. You can't, if we're going to say it's a sliding scale, then we have to drop the term altogether. And this is why. Because every single human being on the planet has latent narcissism. We all score somewhere on personality tests for trait narcissism. So the people who are touting it's a sliding scale, they're confusing the victims. It's not a sliding scale, because a human being who's on a sliding scale for narcissism isn't a narcissist. They are a person. They're a person. This is not useful. Not a good way to think about it as a sliding scale. The way we should describe it is a narcissist should only mean NPD. Why? Because say I'm going to help somebody. So I have a client and they're here. Mm-hmm. The way that I help them, if they're, say it to you, and your boyfriend has been mean to you, the way I help you, if your boyfriend is scoring highly for trait narcissism, and the solutions that we can create for the relationship is a branch that goes this way. And the further we go into the therapeutic process, the further it deviates from this branch here, which is what we do if your boyfriend actually has full-blown narcissistic personality disorder. So full-blown narcissistic personality disorder is a complete psychotic break from reality. And the person who has that narcissistic personality disorder is now living in a psychotic dream. And when you interact with them, they force you into their psychosis and they force you into their dream. Your somewhat narcissistic boyfriend isn't doing that. He doesn't have the capacity to. He doesn't have the will to. He doesn't need to. This, if you want to get into it, we can. There are specific needs that have to be fulfilled here, where the person, the narcissist, the person who actually has NPD has to do this. The person who's registering high for trait narcissism, they don't have to do it. They're just lazy and abusive, and probably with a bit of a slap around the chops. And you dumping him and him being heartbroken and him going to therapy for like 6 months, a lot of that would clear up. So if it clears up inside of 6 months, ladies and gents, I have news for you, and I didn't make this up. This is the orthodoxy. That's not a personality disorder, because personality disorders are defined by their rigidity and their resilience to therapy. So if you do 6 months of 1 hour a week talk therapy and it's 80% improved, that was never a personality disorder. That's not, so we're even, but listen, I'm not having a pop at people who watch YouTube videos. I'm not really having a pop at people who create the content, because even academics make this mistake. Even the people who wrote the definition for the DSM, because it was written by a committee of 22 people, even they, in their writings, have blurred the boundaries. They haven't chosen, they haven't decided. Now I have chosen, and I have a way of filtering this, and I'm saying, no, this is narcissistic personality disorder, and this is a real problem. You will be very sick for a long time without a good amount of intervention and help. I've experienced abuse at the hands of a narcissistic personality disorder person, and I've experienced narcissistic abuse at the hands of, she probably was maybe on the spectrum for borderline. It's not the same thing. It looks the same and it sounds the same, but the impact it has on the client, on the target is much different. So if we're talking narcissistic person, if we're saying what is a narcissist, for me, I go straight to that's NPD. If it's NPD, it's a psychotic break with reality. Now, it doesn't say anything about psychosis in the 9 traits for narcissism in the DSM. And generally, I don't think it's mentioned anywhere in the DSM. But who is adjacent to narcissistic personality disorder in the cluster B spectrum? Borderlines. What is a highly comorbid personality disorder with narcissism? Borderline and psychopathy. Are highly comorbid. They're often, narcissism is very, very rarely diagnosed on its own. It's typically diagnosed with something else. And the things it's most frequently diagnosed with, psychopathy and borderline. What is borderline personality disorder? Borderline personality disorder has this word in it, borderline. What's it on the border of? What are we on the boundary of if it's borderline? We're on the boundary of neurosis and psychosis. So it is acknowledged, but only if you look under the hood and you know what you're looking for. And I don't think that modern clinicians are really, they're not wrapping their head around this. And we're all playing this game where we say, oh, narcissism is this. And it's a dreadful mistake. We're really letting our clients down. It's not to be seen as something on a spectrum. It must be appreciated that the person who has full-blown NPD is living inside of a psychotic delusion. Wow, they're crazy. They live in psychosis. Wow, we didn't acknowledge that. Wait, they take the target and drag them into psychosis as well. So then clients will come to me and say, oh, I can't heal. I'm not getting better. I've been to this therapist. I did Indian chanting, and then I did dancing, and all these seminars. Nothing works. I'm like, well, you're still living in psychosis. Of course you're not getting better. Nobody's pulling you out of psychosis because nobody's acknowledging that it's there. That was a very long-winded answer, but necessary.
Yeah, well, it's very important for you to distinguish the actual narcissistic person and just an unhealthy person, an asshole, an unhealthy relationship that's not good for you. It's very different things.
Yes, very, very different. And the treatment is different. And I don't want, so if somebody is high for trait narcissism and it's a relation, because typically most people who come to this for relationships, you could go to therapy and it could get better. If the expert, me or the clinician or the psychotherapist fucks that up, and they do all the time, and they say that's not NPD, that's narcissism, go to therapy, you have just opened up a fresh gateway to a fresh hell for your client. Because when the NPD goes to therapy, that just becomes a new torture device. It's never ending with them. It's never ever ending with them. You must, if it's NPD, you must give up hope. You must give up hope, and you must walk away no matter what, or you will remain glued to somebody who's on a downward trajectory, because narcissism points downward. It points to self-destruction. So
what are the effects of actual narcissistic abuse?
What are they not? If somebody's had actual narcissistic abuse with NPD, they will go into a physical, psychological, emotional, and spiritual crisis. It will be the worst psychological pain they've ever suffered in their lives as an adult. It might have been worse if they're the victim of childhood abuse. Name it. There will be immune system disorders. I'm old enough now and bold enough to stand by my beliefs on this one. Immune system disorders correlate in my client base for 10 years, have always correlated highly with narcissistic abuse. Why? Okay, here's my conjecture. I'm a little bit of a hippie as well. I think if you tell yourself I'm being abused, I'm in the presence of something toxic, a very toxic entity. Here he is, here she is. Ooh, kissy, 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 yum, yum, I love you. And I'm going to sleep with you. I'm going to have sex with you. We're going to share accounts and we're going to share a bed. What you're, but so you know it's evil. You know this entity is evil, but you look at the mask they present you and you put all your attention here. Oh, beautiful mask. Ignore the monster and let yourself get infected. I think you're telling your body and your brain, stop defending yourself. We don't defend ourselves. We exist inert in the presence of danger. We exist inert in the presence of evil. So immune system disorders, what's happening? Your body is no longer fighting back. Your body is no longer saying, hey, I'm a person, virus. I'm a person, disease, illness. Get out, get out, get out, get out. I'm going to fight you. Or your fight goes because you live a life of, you're just the vampire's victim. So you just lie there while it guzzles on your blood and flesh. And so you've entrained your system to stop defending itself. Immune system disorders, insomnia, because insomnia is rest and you're already in a nightmare reality and you don't look after yourself. You've told your body we don't look after ourselves, so no need to sleep. Plus parts of you will be trying to wake up and being like, wake up, you'll have terrible nightmares. Weight gain, you put fat on your body to try and protect yourself as a layer of comfort, like a duvet cover from the thing that is attacking you all the time. Alcoholism to escape reality and numb, because you're constantly adrenalized with a narcissist because you sense the evil and your body, the animal inside of you is like evil, 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 danger, danger, danger. But you're staying and you're kissing it. You're staying and you're serving it. So you may as well drink to stay numb. Drugs, depression, anxiety, you name it. I believe over a long enough timeline, this does, and will kill people. Kill people. Narcissistic abuse murders people in the end, unless they escape.
Why would you say, don't they escape?
It's hard not to talk about this once you get into the weeds of technical questions. Like, so now we're getting a little bit deeper without using myth and without using like examples from horror movies or fantasy movies. If you remember Lord of the Rings, Frodo is caught by a giant spider. And the first thing a spider does is it injects the victim with a paralyzing agent, binds the victim in a web of lies, and then slowly erodes the flesh, because a spider doesn't have like a mandible and jaws and teeth like a tiger. It has to slowly soak the victim and rot the victim, and then it can eat. So it needs you soft. It's a disgusting example I just gave you, but people need it. They have to
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good, right? But it's pretty gross.
Yeah.
So you end up with like horror movie, fantasy movie allegories, because this is what's happening. Why am I not fighting and running away? Because I'm bound in deception. If you take all of the lies away and you say, you do one thing. So I'm Gandalf. I get my wand and I cast a spell. Here's the narcissistic abuse relationship beginning. I'm going to do one thing to save the victim. And I've only got one spell, one time. Every time you open your mouth, narcissist, you tell the victim the truth. You tell the victim the truth. Not one narcissistic relationship would ever take place ever again in the world, ever. You can't. It depends on deception. So the narcissist would have to say, hi, I'm an evil piece of shit and I'm here to exploit you. Like, okay, like everybody loves a bad boy, but like how much of that are you gonna, you might be like, oh, this guy's kind of funny and yeah, you're like, wow, that's hot. No, everybody loves a bad boy, but there's only so much of that before you realize this guy isn't joking. This isn't a shtick. He's really like this. Plus, he would have to continuously say. So like if he's holding your face and kissing you and saying, you're the most beautiful girl I've ever seen, because of the spell, he'd have to say, I just told you you're the most beautiful girl I've ever seen. But actually, I don't see you as a girl or as a human at all. I see you as a target. I see you as a piece of meat. You're one of many. There was many before you. There'll be many after you. That romantic moment wouldn't hit the same.
Well, I tried to imagine it while you say it's so gross. It's like, oh.
So that kind of like evil confidence would then become less attractive because he has to tell you the truth about every single thing he's doing. You know, baby, we're going to get married one, you know, the future faking. I want to take you to the, I don't know, the Maldives or Bali or whatever. He finds out what your fantasy is, but they do it in a crude way, you see, because they're kind of dumb and they're impressionable and they're childlike. So he'll take fantasies from other girls that don't apply to you, and then he'll hit you with it. And every once in a while, you get this jolt like, ugh, I don't like that. Why did he say that to me? Baby, we're going to go to Bali one day. And you're like, Bali? Fuck Bali. I don't want to be around a bunch of stupid Australian tourists. Where's he got that from? I wanted to go to the Amalfi Coast. They will screw up. They do screw up because they're like clunky robot predators. They're kind of clunky. But the lies, it's the lying, that's the power, is in deception. If they couldn't lie, they wouldn't be able to do it. The nerve agent that they fire into you to keep you paralyzed is the constant gaslighting. So even as they're lying to you and telling you that they're the best thing ever, you're the best thing ever, you're going to have a wonderful life together in the future, they're also telling you subtly and sometimes overtly, baby, you're not strong. You can't do this. You can't cope. You don't understand. You're a little, you know, your sense of reality, you know yourself. Come on. You can't do this, because you've already told them that like you have anxiety issues and depression issues, because that's what people do in relationships where there's love. Love requires intimacy and vulnerability. So you open up. You don't know that you're delivering information to the devil that is going to be used as ammunition against you. You've no idea. They know what they're doing. Oh, you were abused in childhood. Okay, these are the buttons I'm going to push. Oh, you're abandoned by your mother or your father. These are the buttons I'm going to push. So they slowly erode confidence. They slowly break down your boundaries. Now, this goes on for a little bit of time. There are good parts to it. That's why there's love bombing. If it's a romantic relationship, the sex may be very good because of the mirroring, and they're very good at inducing responses in people, which includes like sexual responses, sexual arousal, sexual obsession, orgasm. Can be, not always. Like sometimes they think they're amazing in bed and absolutely fucking useless, but that can be a bind. If it was a familial relationship, then the bind that means you won't leave is, you know, if this is your mother, well, you have a biological drive into that. You want your mother's love. If it was a job, if it was an employer, whatever the employer represents, whatever opportunity he or she represents as a gatekeeper, you want what they have. So you're bound by love, the love of a person and the love of things. You're bound in by your love, and you're bound in by any shadow work that you haven't done, any emotional immaturity that you have, anywhere where your fantasies are big and your sense of reality is small, you get bound up. So for me, it's always been sex and love. It's always been sex and romance. Because if it comes to like physical fitness, if it comes to lifestyle choices, if it comes to business, I'm not childish. I'm an adult. But with sex and love, many of us have this vulnerability for various reasons. Like I just had never grown up. And so I kept getting sucked back in because it's the vulnerability. So it's where you haven't looked at yourself, where there is still shadow work undone, where there is still a lack of maturity and a lack of embracing of reality. That's where they get to you.
How does money play into that?
Well, money's just a means to an end as far as a narcissist is concerned. Money, you know, would just be either access to luxury, access to gaining more attention through dressing flamboyantly, through showing off, or it could be used to control the victim. It can be used as a tool. It can be used as a weapon. So yeah, did you have like a specific example or idea with money?
More for the victim. Let's say he or she becomes financially dependent and realizes, oh no, this relationship, like this has to end, and wants to leave. But because the finances are not there, everything is harder.
Well, as I just said, immaturity is going to fuck you up. Like, how have you got into a relationship where you're financially dependent on your partner? Nobody should be financially dependent on their partner. Nobody ever does. And people in the comments will be like, how dare you say that? That's so misogynistic or patriarchal or whatever fucking stupid buzzword they want to use. Listen, kids, If you're an adult and you want to live a normal life, get financial independence. Don't come crying to me if you become financially dependent on somebody who's an asshole. Why should they treat you well? Why should any human being treat any other human being well? Humans are not nice. We're not. See, this is where philosophically the entire culture is weak, because we're trying to run on poor coordinates. Everything's a Disney movie. Everything is a rom-com. People are just nice. No, there are serial killers out there. There are con artists out there. There are rapists out there. There are human traffickers out there. There are pedophiles out there. No, they're not nice. There is darkness in humanity and there is light. But when you just focus on one and you refuse to look at the other, that's where you get screwed up. Now, you might find it comforting to be like, oh, goo goo gaga, I do yoga. So that means when I have good intention, my goo goo gaga karma will protect me. Okay, go out and live. Go out and live. These are my clients. They go out in the world and they live on these coordinates. I'm like, this is a shit philosophy. I taught self-protection for probably for about 15 years before I did this. And I've read the case studies. I've read the files. I know what evil lurks inside of the hearts of men and women. I know what people are capable of. And we have to start from some kind of a philosophical premise. Everybody who recovers from NPD abuse, not narcissistic abuse generally, but with an actual NPD, their philosophy is so deeply rewritten that it typically becomes religious. They typically have to develop a new spiritual understanding of the world. The world is a wonderful place. It has many wonderful things inside of it, but it also has great ugliness and violence. Some people are very, very good. Some people are almost like bodhisattvas, saints living on earth. Many people are asleep and unconscious, and in that unconscious, they will do terrible things. And then there's actively evil people who are doing evil knowingly. They're awake, they're conscious, and they're still doing evil. And this is what we need to be. This is where we need to start from. So yeah, everybody should be financially independent and everybody should learn how to fight. Everyone. If I had children, they would learn to fight and they would learn to make money. Why? Because the world isn't a nice place and there are nasty people. And I would teach my children to be able to destroy nasty people.
That will be very beneficial for a lot of people.
Everybody who's around me eventually learns to fight. Like my friends, family members, eventually somebody's going to get a boxing lesson. Eventually somebody's going to get a Muay Thai lesson. Eventually, because I believe this in my core. You have to learn to fight and you have to be able to identify evil and say, this is evil. This is another cultural coordinate that's got us fucked up. We won't judge. Don't judge. It's evil to you because you don't understand their culture. No, that's moral relativism. That's poison. That's weakness. I'm a moral absolutist. What's right is right. It's right over there. It's right over here. It was right 15,000 years ago, and it'll be right in 15,000 years' time. Don't talk shit. Don't talk shit. I judge. I judge. Judge and reject evil as evil, and nobody will get into narcissistically abusive relationships anymore.
It's about clear boundaries, right? From the get-go.
From the get-go. We need boundaries. And again, to bring it back to from psychology to culture, we're living in a time where it's seen as a high cultural value and evidence of virtuousness and open-mindedness to erode all boundaries and to take all boundaries away. Now, I'm not saying that we shouldn't have, as intelligent, responsible adults, an openness and a tolerance from deviation from the norm. I'm not one of these right-wing lunatics who's like, everybody has to dress like this and act like this, because I'm weird. I'm an outlier. I'm a statistical outlier in how I want to live my life. So I say, no, we have to have tolerance for outliers, but that doesn't mean we don't have fundamental boundaries for interpersonal conduct. We always have. We always have, and we should start bringing them back.
What would be good boundaries to have? Just some basics, like even cultural or like personal, just some good basics.
Do you mean for protecting yourself against narcissistic abuse? Good boundaries for protecting yourself against
that
narcissistic
too, but
abuse?
also like just in general, like because it's going to be good either way, right? like
Well, what do you mean by what do you mean by good? Let's do this
oh, okay.
Socratically. What do you mean by good?
Like, yes, so for in one way to keep the abuse away, so you don't slip into anything, but also
Yep.
just to like nurture and like find good healthy people and like filter out the assholes fast.
It's a good answer. It's a good start of an answer. Probably I could ask you that again and again over about 10-day periods, and you'd fill that out, you'd flesh it out. Can I ask you though, when you use the word good, generally speaking, what do you see as being morally good? What is good versus evil?
Good versus evil. Well, respect.
Respect is good, okay?
Beneficial for both parties.
You're talking about romance, goodness in terms of romance.
Friendship, business.
Okay. Mutually beneficial relationships
yes.
as a general rule. That seems good to me. Anything else?
Enjoyable, but it's not really a requirement. Like things can be neutral too. Like it's not.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, enjoyable seems good to me. Like if there's not enjoyable, why are we? It's got to be beneficial. It's either got to make you money or give you something. Otherwise, what are we doing? What do you see as bad? What would be one example of bad? What would be bad?
Yeah, what would be bad? Well, not respectful, cheating, lying. So the truth would be a good thing, right?
Okay.
What would be bad? Being overly emotional, so emotionally dysregulated.
Okay.
I think. I'll leave it at that for the moment.
Okay. These are good answers. But what I care about is not the content of your answers. What I care about is that you're attempting to answer these questions.
Mm-hmm.
We are not taught philosophy in school. And what we've just done in 2.5 minutes is the basis for developing a moral philosophy. You develop a moral philosophy not by ingesting books on moral philosophy. You develop a moral philosophy like a muscle. You have to wrestle with these questions. We regularly practice. We say, okay, you told me what was good last week. What's good this week? And you'll get stronger. The muscle grows, it gets bigger. And then people have a strong moral philosophy that they carry. And in carrying those muscles of a strong moral philosophy, they say, this is good. This is bad. It's for me. I'm not like for the world. I don't know. I'm not a priest. I'm not an ideologue. I'm not a dictator. But for me, this is what I let in. This is what I don't let in. Now, what good does that do you? Maybe one day you meet a really hot guy who's really funny and he's exactly your type, but he lives his life in a way that isn't great. The old version of you with a weak moral philosophy would say, I'm going to let that go. So he deals drugs every once in a while. I can probably get him to stop once we're 3 months into the relationship and he's in love with me. So I'll get him to stop later. But right now, I just want to get with this guy. That's an old version of you. You with a strong moral philosophy would say, this man is beautiful. And normally I'd be very attracted to him, but I'm not letting that into my life under any circumstances or for any reason. This is safety. This is weakness. I want to make people strong to make them safe. I want to have strong moral boundaries so that they can make good choices and be safer. That's where the boundaries start, is with a good moral philosophy. You can't have boundaries if you don't have values. You only place boundaries on things that you value. And you can't value something properly if values are eroded and the boundaries are eroded. So there's no boundaries between anything. There's no good, there's no bad, there's no up, there's no down. Anybody can be anything. I can identify as a Black lesbian 55-year-old American communist who's left-handed tomorrow. Why? Because that's how I identify. And if anybody challenges me, I just start screaming at them. This is not good. This is very bad. I would go so far as to say that's evil, because I'm clearly a 45-year-old white man, pinkish white, from England, not from America. I'm not a communist. I shouldn't lie. And if I feel like I am that, that's my problem. That's between me, my therapist, and God. Because reality is reality, and truth is truth, and fantasy is fantasy. Fantasy cannot be reality. This is narcissism. As I told you earlier, the narcissist lives in psychosis, and they pull people into their dream, a sick, hellish, dark, evil dream, and they force you to live there with them. Everything else is just bait. Everything else is bait. They just want you to live their sick dream with them, and they want you to suffer, because in your suffering, it proves to them they are superior to you, and it proves to them they're a psychotic delusion that they're superior beings with special entitlements and special privileges.
I think I get what you mean. Like, because you asked me a question, like I had the realization, like it requires you to be involved with yourself, right? So you can only tolerate the abuse, the whatever, if you're not involved with yourself, if you're what's the word, you have apathy towards it, or be it something, but you, like, it's like you said,
Yes.
you don't care. So you don't care
That's
about
right.
yourself and whatever like thing you
That's
are
and
involved
that's the
with, right?
that's the age we live in. We live in an age of self-neglect. We think we're living in an age of self-worship. We're not. So if you take consumer capitalism to its end point, you are nothing. You're not everything. You're not God. You're nothing. If you are just a consumer, then you're just a central nervous system waiting to receive various pleasures and various stimulations. Have sex with whoever you want, as much as you want, eat what you want, listen to whatever music you want, pleasure, 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 pleasure. It's depravity and degradation. It ruins the self. There's no self left after all that. Total self-neglect. And that's why narcissism is on the rise, because this is the culture we live in. Everything is everything. You can do whatever you want. Nobody can tell you no. No is the ultimate taboo. So to say no to somebody, you're not doing that, is the worst thing that you can say in this culture, which is why the standard of services everywhere is coming down, because the worst thing you can do is be not cool. Everybody should just passively accept everybody else's reality. Now, I'm not from that background. I was raised in private school, and then I was doing strict traditional martial arts. And if you fucked up, people come up to you and be like, hey, stop fucking up or you're going to get punished. Do better. And you would be like, oh shit, I better get my shit together and do better. It's very, very simple. All of this stuff is simple, but yes, there is total self-neglect. And in that self-neglect, of course, narcissists can get hold of you, because if you don't value something, if you don't value yourself and you don't have reverence for the self, then you would just give it to anybody. We only put boundaries around things that we value. We don't put boundaries around ourselves when we don't value ourselves. And this is why fundamentally, as we move towards the end of this conversation, I have to mention spirituality. There is a spiritual element to this. This is a kind of spiritual battle. And what we need to come back to is reverence. Reverence, not just for ourselves, but for reality. We have to realize I did not cause myself to come into being. I'm not God. Something else did. Something else caused me into being moment to moment. As we know from the quantum physicists, we're mainly space, and the particles that we're made up of flicker in and out of reality constantly. And if whatever is causing me to come into being decides that I will not be, I will not be. And nobody will notice. Reality will just sew itself together in my absence, and I will be forgotten completely. In that, we become reverent and we have gratitude, which is the opposite of resentment, which is what the world is full of now. Because no matter how much you pleasure yourself, you've never pleasured yourself enough. In that reverence, there's gratitude. And in that reverence and gratitude, I can say to you, hey, you're a person. I don't have a right to hurt you. I didn't make you. You're not my child. I'm not God. I didn't cause you to be. What right do I have to harm one hair on your head? Zero. I fear God, so I will not lie. because I don't know. I don't know what the consequences are. I don't know. I'm just a dumb flesh suit, you know? So I can't lie to you because I don't know what the consequences could be. The consequences could be terrible for me and for you and for the world. So I can't lie. There's no hidden dark space where my lie will go nowhere and have no impact. No, it has an impact. And God knows what it will be.
Yeah, we pretend that there are no consequences for our actions, but there are.
And they're complex because that's the system we exist inside of. It's very, very complex. And you see, like, I can see as I'm aging, I'm like, oh, there's Christian concepts here, there's concepts from Islam that I'm taking, and Buddhism, which is what I was raised with in the traditional martial arts. Karma, cause and effect. That was it's more of a physics point than a religious point. Karma isn't Buddha the god punishes and rewards the good or the bad. Karma literally means in Sanskrit action. It means action, and the implicit notion of action is cause effect. It's only cause effect. Like if I do this, it makes a noise. That's it. There isn't like a moral judgment in the concept of karma per se. It's when you do a thing, you exist inside of a complex system, things happen. You want to lie? Okay. You want to do violence? Okay. You want to do bad things to people? Okay. Let's see what that karma creates. It can't be nothing. It can't be consequence free. No such thing in this reality.
Yep. I think that's a good part to end on.
Absolutely.
Richard, how can people like get more of you, find you on social media, work with you?
They mustn't. It's terribly hard for people, terribly challenging. I'm very annoying. I make people angry. They should avoid me at all costs. But if they put my name into YouTube, they will see a whole slew of videos of me talking about things.
Awesome. I will link that down below too. So they'll
Yes, link the slew.
So they have a really hard time avoiding you.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you very much for having me on. It was a pleasure talking to you.
My pleasure. My pleasure.